Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody out here this evening for our, we actually have three meetings here tonight. We're going to start off first with our RDA meeting, our Regional Development Agency. Council, I'll need a motion to go into an RDA meeting.
I'll make a motion that we open the RDA meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have a set of minutes that we need to approve. And so do I have a motion there as far as approving the minutes from June 4th, 2020?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of June 4th, 2020 for the RDA.
Okay,
Second.
there's a motion and a second by Councilman Thomas. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 2, which will be presented by Tracy Probert, which is the budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021 for the RDA.
Thank you. Tonight I have RDA Resolution 20-03 to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. We held the public hearing on June 4th. Since that time, nothing has changed to the budget that was presented that evening. And so staff would recommend the board adopt Resolution 20-03 and for the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. I don't know if there are any questions.
Questions, council?
Just information question. Last time you mentioned there was some possibilities up north end of Main Street, Alex. Are those projects will take a lot of RDA money or not so much? Not like we anticipate on the south end. Okay.
And that action could take place in this next fiscal year then, correct? Or farther out? Okay. Okay. Council, is there any other questions? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion then to adopt the budget for 2020, 20-21, or 2021.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt RDA Resolution 20-03 and the Layton City Redevelopment Agency budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to do a roll call vote on this one? Since it's a expenditure. Okay, with that, I'm going to do a roll call vote. So I'll start with Councilman Day.
Yes.
Boxham.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Okay, that actually concludes our RDA meeting. So, Council, you want to make a motion to come out of our RDA meeting and go into our work meeting?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will now go into our work meeting for June 18th, 2020. As we have done in the past, we like to start out our meeting with the reports from any of the committees that our council members are on or represent the rest of us. So, council, do any of you have any reports that you'd like to share with the rest of the body?
No, but I'd like you to report on mine since I didn't get noticed on it. I didn't get advised about the youth court graduation, but Joy was there, so I think they deserve a little report on that.
Okay. I'll be happy to. So this past Wednesday, the youth court had their annual graduation from this past year, and they had a fair amount in attendance. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of them that were graduating, and all of them have intentions of going on to college and actually pursuing a career in the judicial system is the best way to put it. Each one of them had a little bit of take on it. One wants to become a nurse first and then progress into the judicial system, so I thought that was very encouraging. I don't recall the amount of hours, but there was a lot of hours. I know one little gal, she had over 540 volunteer hours herself. But collectively, they had a lot of volunteer hours. So I was very proud of them, and again, want to thank them all for their service on behalf of the city and their peers, and being able to judge their peers. So, yeah, it was a different graduation. No contact whatsoever. They maintained their distancing, and they had their masks on. So it was kind of cool.
Just a quick one from the Department of Transportation. Just that the Church Street Bridge over I-15 may open as early as Friday.
Mm-hmm.
As part of that project, they'll be closing Gentile Street Bridge as early as Sunday, and then they'll detour people from Main Street and Layton Parkway. So hopefully they'll have that done 65 days or so is what they said, to widen and improve the bridge in that location. But just some updates so that we can see things moving forward and hopefully be able to get where we want to go in a few months with all the access points open.
Well, the nice thing about that, too, and being able to start that project a little bit early is the fact that our high school kids, certainly, they paid the price this past year on not being able to have a decent graduation or a real closure to the year. So hopefully we can open this street up in time for their new year to begin. So, okay.
So I noticed on my way down tonight, the sign said it had been changed from Sunday to Saturday.
Well, every day counts in the construction business, so.
When are they opening the other one? Did you say Saturday?
Friday.
Oh, as early, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there's no ribbon coating on it or no running our golf carts or go-karts down the street or anything like that. But you can walk it. Okay.
So I have just a couple things. One, our youth council did a service project. We had about 8 youth. Their advisor and myself went up to Open Doors, the food bank up there, and helped do landscaping, cleanup, and some bagging of food and stuff like that. And then our communities that care, we had a pretty successful bingo that kind of tied in a little bit with our Layton history. We had 5 winners from that were rewarded with gift certificates from local businesses. And then we're going to start gearing back up to get the CTC going. We have a stakeholders meeting scheduled via Zoom on July 8th.
That's excellent. I really appreciate all that work there, Dawn. And I can tell you that Jason from Open Doors has already sent an email with expressing his thanks and appreciation for those kids and all the work that they've done. He said that was very much
They really
thankful for
worked. They worked. You know, you get a bunch of teenage boys together and you have to kind of worry, especially when you give them a lawnmower and a weed eater, but they really helped clean that place up. They stayed on task and were great.
That's great. I'd love to see the youth in action like this, and again, that's just shows how valuable our citizens are here in our city. Okay, Councilman Morris, do you have any reports?
The only thing I'd like to bring up, I don't know if you were going to bring this up or not, we're still in a pandemic. We're still, our case counts are still growing here in the city and throughout the county. And just in the last last 4 days, we've had 12 more cases. We're up to about 147 for the Layton South Weaver area, which is the most in the county. However, the concentration measurement that they use of cases per 100,000, we're 6th, so we kind of drop. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But we still need to be vigilant, and we heard from Dr. Dunn yesterday talking about what we're at the highest risk ever for this disease right now. And so even though we've moved phases and we're looking at moving to another phase, the green phase, the virus hasn't gone away. we have to be more vigilant. And so we're talking about wearing our face masks out in public, where you can't be 6 feet from people, good hand hygiene, and if you're sick, stay home. I mean, those are just basic common sense things that I know a lot of people were upset that the economy was shut down, and to whatever extent it was. It's now reopening, but the comments were, just let us know what the risks are and let us govern ourselves. Okay, now's the time to show that. We know what the risks are. For the most part, we learned a lot. Now it's time for us to govern ourselves and to show that we can mitigate the spread of this and still operate within our economy, because that has to come back.
You're
So
absolutely
we're-
right.
But the virus has not gone away yet, so.
It's
just a-
not,
just a thought.
and while those numbers are alarming and the fact that they're increasing, I think the only positive from this is they are not seeing an increase in hospitalization. So unfortunately, yeah, a lot more people are getting sick with the virus and having to go through that, but at least we're not seeing the hospitalization. And I think within the county, we are still at 5 that are in the hospital, so that's
Yeah,
that's
we're
a good
lower
thing.
rates on positives and hospitalizations, and, yeah.
Thank you. Councilman Thomas, do you have anything to report?
Nada.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
excuse me, nothing.
Okay, well, I appreciate you, council, for your efforts in all the different committees you sit on and representing the city. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, and Tracy Probert will assist us in this discussion.
Okay, so tonight you'll be presented ordinance 20-17, and that will be a public hearing. And so you'll need to take public comment related to the amendments and then move forward from there. The amendments, you may have seen this in your packet of information, $263,814 addition in the general fund. A small portion of that, $78,000, was related to a need in the streets department due to salt, sand, and asphalt overages. So we needed to bring that part of the budget into balance. 93,000 in police and fire special services, wildland fire, those types of revenues. Also recognizing the use of some funds for the purchase of a fire heavy equipment apparatus from the neighboring city. And then 91,500 in grants that were previously unanticipated. All of those are CARES Act type grants. Well, not all of them, but most of it's CARES grant, and some bulletproof vest grant that we were able to receive. Were there any questions related to any of these as you reviewed the information?
Just one, Tracy, street self-insurance, that's something I haven't heard before.
So if they have an accident if any department has an accident with a vehicle, then the department has to cover that out of their budget, and they have to move money from other areas, so they have to conserve and cut back in order to pay for that themselves. It's kind of well, I don't know what word to use in this form, but kind of self-penalizing, right? If you have a wreck, then your department gets to pay for it. There isn't just some magic fund that's going to cover it for you. So it's a good incentive within the department to be, not that there already isn't incentive enough, to be very careful, and generally all of our employees are very careful with the equipment they're entrusted with, but there's always an occasional accident, so that's generally what the self-insurance means.
And then Tracy, I just have a question regarding the 54,000. In one area, it's a transfer from ramp to the athletic fund for the centennial celebrations, and then down below, it's the athletic recognition of the ramp funding. Where we're not having the centennial celebration, is that going to be able to be carried over and not lost?
Yeah, it'll be carried over. So it gets budgeted. If it doesn't get spent, then it'll stay in that fund. Where
Okay.
it's the athletic fund, it'll still be there. And that's where Parks and Rec would like to track those types of activities. So yeah, that won't be a
And it'll be,
problem. We
it-
will probably bring it back as a budget amendment in the next year so that it can be reappropriated,
okay,
because otherwise it just sits in the fund balance.
that was my question.
And I'm pretty
Thanks.
sure there was some expenditures in that fund as well.
Okay,
So that amount will be not the full amount coming back in, just so you know.
Okay.
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 Any other questions? Okay, we can move on then to item number 3, which is the current budget.
Okay,
Or not the current budget, excuse me, the proposed budget.
the proposed budget. So that'll be ordinance 2018, and we did hold the public hearing on June 4th. And so you won't have any requirement to take public comment tonight. You may receive some, but we've already gone through that process, and we did that intentionally to allow some time for you as a council to listen to comments that were made and then be able to make adjustments if you desired. And so we've fulfilled that. Also important in the motion for adoption tonight is that you're adopting the budget, the tax rate, and the compensation schedule for elected statutory and appointed officials. And that's worded out that way in the adoption. But the tax rate being proposed is 0.001645, which is the certified rate by the county and the state. So there's no increase or decrease in the rate. We're taking what they've accepted. And what that means is that they've given us a rate that will generate the same amount of revenue as we generate in this current year that we have now, plus new growth. So they add new growth into that. Let's see if there's
So
anything.
Tracy, what do they do? They figure things have appreciated and adjust that way?
Mhm.
That's how they figure that?
Right, so they go out and reassess the county. I think nowadays they do the entire county. I apologize for not recalling. It used to be that they did a fifth of the county, so every 5 years, your property would get reassessed. And I think now they're doing it more frequently than that. But they go out, they do a reassessment, they see what valuations have done, and then, so valuations go up 5%, your rate comes down 5% so that you generate the same amount of revenue. Then they calculate new growth based on building permits and things like that that get submitted to the county, the value of those permits. And they do some calculations on that, which are pretty complex, and they come up with an amount that we're allowed to add. So if we were at 8 point, I'm just pulling numbers out because I didn't open the book, but if we were at 8.2 million last year in sales tax, and now we're at 8.4 or 5 million, the reason for that difference is because of new growth. And we're allowed to have that.
But do you remember what it was last year? It was 1.7,
It
wasn't it?
was 1666. So that's that, and then I would just point out some things that changed from the tentative budget, from when we pointed out the other day. We had discussed that as well, that we had proposed taking just over 1.2 million out of the budget. That consisted of 500,000 for a fire engine, 120,000 for HVAC work at this building, eliminating the transfer to the street lighting fund for 200,000, and also delaying and taking out of the budget the Chapel Park playground, and reducing one of the employee requests in the finance department, taking those out. And then we also proposed in our last meeting to put on hold about $1.3 million, a little more than $1.3 million worth of projects, personnel, and equipment. And we identified those for you in some slides. And so that would be the plan that Alex, as the city manager, would move forward with your approval, obviously. The revenues that went along with that, we reduced fee in lieu from automobiles 50,000. And these I did just to balance the budget. We reduced sales tax 847,000, telecommunications tax 125,000. And that one isn't actually related to slowing of the economy or anything. That tax just keeps going down. And so as I looked at it again, well, let's just take it down even a little more. Room tax, we cut that significantly, and interest will be anticipated to be significantly lower as well because they cut the rates twice in the last couple of months. So some of the other funds that were affected from the tentative budget, the street lighting fund. In the tentative budget, it was presented as a $1 increase. In the proposed budget, it's a $2 increase in the fee. and also the elimination of the transfer from the general fund. The ramp fund, with the elimination of the Chapel Park playground, that brought down the amount for projects by $269,000. We've reduced the revenue anticipated there, $138,000, interest $30,000, and the difference in that we're accounting for as a return to fund balance. Capital Projects Fund is affected by the projects that I've mentioned, so those monies don't get transferred to the Capital Projects Fund, and so the revenues transferred in and the projects were reduced in that fund. And in the Water Fund, there was an additional transfer that where there's a shared vehicle between secondary water and water. We've discussed that in a few meetings. That needed to be added to this, to the proposed budget, $23,000. That would be what I would propose to discuss tonight in the meeting before presenting the ordinance to you. I don't know if there's any other questions, information, discussion.
Okay, council?
So Tracy, can you, again, on the employee hiring that we put on hold, what the positions were and how much they were?
Yeah. Let me find that here in my book. So the positions that were put on hold: a code enforcement supervisor, 2 new patrol officers, 2 new crossing guards, a pay increase for all of the crossing guards, a recreation supervisor, and park maintenance worker. The accounting clerk was eliminated, so out of all positions that were proposed, the only ones that are proposed to move forward effective July 1 would be a training specialist in fire that's paid for half out of fire and half out of EMS, and a part-time inspector in engineering that they requested, for the most part related to the Highway 89 project, just the need for more inspection as that project comes through. Does that sound correct, Steve? Okay.
Are the crossing guards, are they related to the new elementary school that are being built? Or are there, so can those be postponed? Or are they absolutely needed for the school to function?
I don't know the answer to that.
And Chief Keefe's not here.
You want to?
Maybe Alex knows.
I think Alex can speak to that.
The idea would be that those would be postponed through September when school starts, and we'd make that evaluation prior to the beginning of the school. So the other positions would be postponed until December, at least the first of the year. But those we would, as we will have 2 or 3 months of data by then, and then would make the decisions. They're pretty small dollar amounts, relatively speaking, but no, we wouldn't want the schools to open without those guards in place. So that's the plan we have.
Okay. I know we have a hard time sometimes getting them anyway. We have our police and code enforcement out doing crossing guard stuff, so I'd hate to even short them even more.
So I got a question along that same line. Do we have still in the budget a public relations salary? And since we don't have that filled, could we use that for some of this?
Yes. Yeah, that money's still in the budget. So I don't know that it makes, any practical difference whether using new money or money that's in the budget already. It hasn't been, I don't know if it's still appropriated or not, so there may have to be a process to just do a budget amendment and pull it back in to appropriate it. But that position hasn't been filled.
And then Tracy, my other question on the patrol officers. Does this 1.3 million that's on hold include their supplies and vehicle?
Yes.
Include that, okay.
And again, is that hold until the fall when we can evaluate? Any other questions? I know you guys got lots of them, so.
Yeah, I got a question.
so
I got a
you might as well get
question.
it out there.
So, before I ask the council their feelings on it again, I brought up the maintaining the property tax rate multiple times in the different work meetings. So, and I kind of want to know the support, if it is there or not, from the council after I ask you a question, Tracy.
Okay.
So the difference in those, do you have any idea how much, say on an average $300,000 house, that would be for the year to maintain that rate?
To maintain the rate, I didn't do the calculation. I think that it's about 6%. So if we did 17% last year and you divide that out, we were about 1.2 million. And that was, boy, it's a stretch to remember
No,
what it was per
I'm
house.
talking more on a per
Per
house.
house.
Per household.
Ooh, I would hate to guess. Right off the top of my head, I don't know. Since we kind of decided we weren't gonna head down that road, I didn't spend any time doing those calculations, so.
And is that kind of the consensus of the council not to go that route, or, I mean, before we vote on the budget, I kind of want to know what's what, so we're straight on the vote.
That's just, we decided not to, the ship sailed on that, I believe, for this year, has it not?
That's what I'm asking.
I mean, legally or officially? Really?
Yeah,
Well,
because
at
we
this
would have had
point-
to,
at
had
this
to
point, I
acknowledge the
think you
truth and
could-
taxation.
Yeah.
You could still do it if you chose to, but we'd have to let the.
Extends the time frame if you decide to do that.
Yeah, it did.
Mm-hmm.
No, I thought our discussions, like Clint said, I thought we had kind of talked about maybe with the street lighting and everything, that this year we would just let it go, but to definitely revisit it for the next budget.
My opinion was kind of what I told you today, just that I think we should be doing it every year, making at least that determination as what we're been elected to do. But I think that the idea in the midst of the pandemic, that I think punting for this year was probably the smart thing to do. So I'm not interested in using it for this year, but I certainly am interested in looking at it next year and the year after that and the year after that.
And I agree with Zach on that.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that discussion?
Oh,
or-
it helped, I mean, as we know today, so the rate went from 1,666 to, if we adopt it tonight, 1,645, that's gone down.
Mhm.
And
Growth.
in the discussions during the previous council and everything that happened this last year with the property tax increase, we had years of not doing, well, actually, we had years of, we lowered it. We decided to lower it by 2% a couple of years and put us even further
In the-
behind.
Yes.
And so that rate, each year, as property rates continue to, or property values continue to go up, that rate comes down, as you would.
Correct.
And so to catch up for that, that's why we have the truth and taxation, we're able to do that. The thing that kind of hampers the cities with that is the fact that there's not a way to keep up with inflation as things get even more expensive. And so this is a way to at least keep up with inflation and keep things equal with that. Now, technically, it would be a tax increase. But as a city, as we look at the stable areas of revenue, being able to keep up with inflation is a big deal as we're trying to deliver city services. So something that we should be looking at each year, I agree. That's part of our responsibility, and not to shy away because there's a truth in taxation thing that comes. We just have to do what's best as we look at the services that we need and the budget, and it's just part of the things that should be each year talked about. So I thought we'd mentioned that we weren't going to do it this year,
Right.
but it ought to be something that is looked at each year and not just, well, no, I don't want to do the truth in taxation, so let's not do it.
Well, and if anybody listened to what the citizens had to say last year, I mean, that was a big bite for them to take. And if I heard it loud and clear, it was, why don't you just look at a small amount each year rather than one ginormous amount? So, I mean, I think going forward, that would be a smart and prudent thing to do on behalf of the city and making sure that we keep up with all the services and and that we need to, and especially as elected officials, that's our job to kind of look at those things.
Yeah, and I additionally think that if we're going to raise revenue, I like the truth in taxation because I like the public comment more than I like raising it in fees, because it's easy to raise it in a fee. The truth in taxation, we want more from each citizen because we're maintaining the rate. We have to stand here and we have to take when they come in and tell us why they don't want it. That's a lot easier than a work meeting where we pass or a budget where we pass a $2 increase in the street lighting fee that they'll talk about, but it's not something that we have to hold a special hearing about. So I personally like the concept of making it part of our every year budget process that Layton goes through truth and taxation, because that's what we should do as responsible stewards of the taxpayer funds.
Okay, the reason I ask is just to firm up in my mind, because I know we've talked about it many times. I knew the consensus was kind of weight, but as we nail down the budget, I just wanted to nail down what people's feelings are on it. That's all.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that forward, because, I mean, that's the purpose of these work meetings, is to, have the discussion and make sure that on behalf of the governing body, we're making the right decisions and a collective decision. So if you guys have any questions or doubt whatsoever, I mean, now's the time to kind of bring it forward and let's discuss it amongst ourselves so we can do what's right. So having said that, is there any more discussion here on this budget or any
Yeah,
other
I got
items of concern?
another one.
Okay, bring it forward.
My personal feeling is with the positions that we want to postpone, I don't feel real comfortable postponing some of those positions, like the 2 officers and the crossing guards. I would rather not postpone those, and I would rather maybe postpone purchase of vehicles or something like that. I'm not saying eliminate purchase of vehicles, but maybe postpone some of those and go ahead with some of these, I think, like the crossing guard positions and 2 new officers in today's world, I think would be beneficial for us, where we could maybe wait a little while on some vehicle purchases or something like that.
And that kind of coincides with my question, and maybe it's more procedural for you, Gary. Maybe, let's say that we want to change something in this budget, and we want to make that motion, or we want to have that discussion amongst ourselves. When's the time to do that? How does that work? When do we start the discussion in terms of if Tom says, I think those positions should stay in, and then we have a discussion about that? Because I know the whole budget has to be voted on combined, but when do we have those discussions about what actually is now the new version of the budget that Tom just decided he wanted to put in, and then we have a discussion and say, yeah, I think that's good, let's go forward with that. So maybe just procedural questions on that.
So maybe first off, the only thing that's been eliminated from the budget are the fire engine, the 1 accounting position, the park, playground, and a couple other things that I listed, right? Anything that's on hold, the budget approves an amount of money, and administratively, Alex has committed to you that we will hold on. This is what we propose to hold on, right? If those things want to be shuffled around, that we don't have to do that in our adoption of the budget, because the money is there.
Appropriated.
Right, and so then it's just an administrative decision. I mean, as a council, you could take your suggestions to the mayor, I would assume, and she could provide them to Alex, but ultimately, you've given Alex the authority to manage that amount of money in the best way that it should be for the city.
But if I want to bring the apparatus back into the budget,
That would have to be
Okay.
something that you, if
Zach,
it's
can
part
you
of your
just talk into
motion.
the mic?
I'll get closer.
Did that answer
That
your
answered it,
question?
yeah.
Okay.
Just when we have discussions about what comes in, what goes out, because you're waiting to vote to the end. And so it's like if we're making a bunch of amendments and discussions, it's becoming something as it's going along that I just want to make sure we have all the discussion so we know what's actually in the final motion. So, because the final motion is going to be motion to adopt the budget and that ordinance, and then with amendments for X, Y, Z, like that? Okay.
Yep.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a good meeting to do that in, which is a work meeting. It's usually closer than this, but it's a good meeting.
And I'm not saying every one of those positions, but I mean, I think the crossing guards are important. I think the officers are probably important. And Zach brings up another one. I think the fire apparatus is, I when we talked about that last time, we didn't really express our opinions. I don't really think that's a good one to eliminate.
Originally, that was meant to be purchased over a 2-year period, and so, you know, we felt like back when we originally proposed the budget in our all-day work meeting, and we weren't in a, well, not quite in a pandemic, I don't think then, that we felt like we had the money as if things continued as normal to just go ahead and purchase that in this coming year. So just a clarification is all, is that originally it wasn't proposed to be purchased in 1 year. And since it was one of the largest single dollar items on the budget, it was a kind of an easier place to come up with that much money. But
We don't-
I understand your point.
And
that's-
Tracy, do we have 1 year already set aside on that?
No.
Was that over a 2-year?
It would have been 21 and 22.
Okay. I remember it
So,
being a 2-year deal.
you know, and I wouldn't have a problem with, and I don't have a problem with them anyway, but some of these things wouldn't be as big an issue, but where we're still uncertain on what money we're gonna have, I think we need to be a little more specific in what we do here
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
That's all.
And with those ones that we've eliminated, that's what we've attempted to propose, is that these specific things we propose we take out. And we'll bring them back next year or the year after, you know, when we see, as the department directors see fit, and then as Alex would like to propose, they'll come back into the budget. Everything that was in the original budget is necessary, right? I mean, eventually that fire apparatus needs to show up. And, you know, does it show up this year, or do we start paying for it next year? That, you know, that's to be determined.
What's the, I mean, if you push it off a year, what does it do for the apparatus? I mean, is this like a sale at Kmart that if we
Go
don't
back
jump
up.
on it,
Does it get more expensive?
you know?
Actually, in some discussion with Alex, actually, one of the things that we have is we did purchase an apparatus from a neighboring city, which we're using as a stopgap that we felt was a real prudent purchase to make. It was a very good price, and it doubles as a heavy rescue and also as a backup engine. So we felt, and Alex and my discussion, we felt like we could safely delay that apparatus. It was, certainly we're going to need to purchase it, but with the purchase that we made from the neighboring city, that's going to work out very well and fulfill our needs. The thing to keep in mind too is when we do purchase the apparatus, it takes almost a year for that apparatus to get built. And typically we pay a part up front, and then we pay again at the end when we take delivery, and then we pay the balance.
And that's not something we're getting from the neighborhood city.
No, we purchased.
This is a new,
Yeah, this would be a
Okay.
brand new apparatus.
Okay.
That's why the price tag's $500,000 versus the
well,
one
no, yeah, but
Right.
it's, yeah,
The one we
okay.
purchased right now we
Right.
put in the budget, was a good deal. It's $40,000. It'll allow us to basically surplus an old truck that we had converted into a heavy rescue for our urban search and rescue, and a trailer that we had to haul behind it, so we can put all that on this one apparatus. So it was I talked with Alex, we felt it was for right now, it's a great purchase, and it works very well for us. And it's also an engine, so we can use it as a reserve engine.
Which is what the apparatus you're looking at was.
Right,
to be-
the purchase would be for a fire engine, correct.
Right. And this thing's, we're not talking a used car that's gonna be there for a year?
Now, this,
It was hardly used.
yeah, this was apparatus we purchased from Kaysville.
Right.
It was a heavy rescue. They actually used it as a heavy rescue. They had purchased some new apparatus. They had this. The price that we paid was a very good price, substantially below what they probably could have sold it to other places. But we've worked out an agreement with them and purchased it from them. So
not
we
the-
felt it was a good purchase.
But-
It actually
But what
served
I'm asking
two
is
purposes.
it's gonna last longer than 2 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
This
okay,
one,
yeah.
like, again, using it as reserve.
You
and
say
as a
stopgap,
heavy
and I
rescue.
think, okay, my kid's in school, as soon as he gets out, I can dump that car.
Right, well, this will be our heavy rescue and a reserve apparatus,
Okay,
but it will serve us for many years into the future. But we can also use it as an engine
right,
if we had other engines that had to go in for
Right.
repair.
thanks.
That make sense?
Yeah, it does
Okay,
now.
all right, great, thank you.
So you're saying it was used or pre-owned, not used.
Pre-owned with about 20,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
And it,
My question, Chief, now is, by delaying the purchase of that engine and our new, how does that affect staffing and equipping the new station? Does that set us behind there?
No, we'll still be able to move one of our apparatus to the new station when that's completed. And again, that's going to take nearly a year to complete that as well. At that point, we have the apparatus now. As far as our deployment, we would do in terms of the apparatus we would use, we would move one of our engines that we have at Station 3 here on Fort Lane. That would be moved to the east side station. And we would probably at that point use the ladder truck and staff the ladder truck out of Station 3. So we'll just move apparatus around. And then eventually we're going to have to purchase that apparatus though. A lot of shuffling of apparatus, so I want to make sure you understood that.
For what it's worth, I know the chief and Alex did ask my opinion on that, and I expressed don't pass a good deal if it's right. If it's that good of a deal, let's grab it, because I felt like it was the right thing to do, and again, it bought us some time, and then the way the chief just explained everything, I think it just makes sense to do that. So thank you for being on the lookout.
And Mayor, it also eliminated a purchase we actually had in the under capital improvement projects a few years down the road, which was to purchase a heavy rescue vehicle as part of the urban search and rescue team that we participate as a state response team within Davis County. And since we'll have this heavy rescue, we'll be able to put the equipment out of take it out of the trailer and the older pickup truck that we use to haul it. This will make it much better for our response for heavy rescue and urban search and rescue in the event of a disaster or earthquake or any kind of a major incident. So that eliminated us having to spend probably $300,000 to $400,000 for a heavy rescue within the next 3 to 5 years.
And you also had additional funding that was sitting there that we could use towards this, right? That kind of qualified?
Yes, the apparatus actually was purchased with, when we go out on wildland fire responses, we receive revenue that covers the cost of personnel going up, and as well as backfill and the use of our apparatus. And so we typically have used that money and put it into an apparatus replacement fund. And so that's what the money was already in there. So that's why we were able to just transfer the money from the wildland revenue, as Tracy talked about, into this line item. So wildland fire response is paid for it.
Right. Well, like I said, it sounded like a win-win all the way around. So, I mean, I think it was a smart thing to do.
Well, I'm all for that purchase. I don't have a problem with that purchase. I'm more concerned about making sure the future one is funded appropriately.
Yeah, well, as Tracy mentioned, we weren't planning on purchasing it till another year, and then we moved it forward initially before, situations kind of turned a little bit. So that was originally the plan. It was still going to be probably a year or two, 2 years out, that we would actually get that apparatus. So I think we'll still be okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You good?
Yeah, well, with that.
I just wanted to make sure that fire engine wasn't the one that they used during the parades at the end to have the water fight.
Yeah.
There's no water.
No, there's no parade
Oh,
this year, so we
different-
can wait
That
till
one's
next year.
privately
Different
owned.
engine.
The other city.
Yeah.
That's
So,
right.
I guess I'm going to be the one that's going to open this can of worms. And it has to do with the merit pay. A couple questions. First of all, I want to say to all the staff that's sitting in the room, you guys do a great job. And this is no reflection on what any of the staff for the city does. But we're in an unknown. I won't even say we're in a hard time because we don't even know if we are. It just depends on what news media you listen to, what you listen to, what you see. I'm hearing conflicting things. Just heard today that Layton's losing 285 jobs because the Bed Bath & Beyond call center's closing. I mean, it's really sad what's going on out there. But we do know that we have great employees and they need to be fairly compensated. So I don't feel comfortable with the full 3%. And one thing that I need to clarify, whether it comes from you or from Gary or Alex, is that if we set a rate for a merit, can it be put on hold until a time that we feel, kind of like with these positions, that we feel more comfortable. We've got another couple of months of numbers behind us. My concern about the numbers we have, the 2 weeks of March didn't look good. April didn't look good. May's looking great. Well, March and April, none of us could go out and buy clothes and, things we couldn't get out of the house to go do that. And all of a sudden we could. And so, was that just pent up spending? What is June and July going to bring? Are we going to continue to stay high? Are we going to settle back, lower because we bought in May what we needed to catch up on? I don't know that any of us have that answer just yet. And so my question is if we do pass a merit at whatever percentage, can it be made retroactive, if the money is there, retroactive back to July 1st?
Yes, in my discussions with Alex, that's the way we could approach that, yes.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else
So
have
the
a
idea
comment?
again would be that just like some of these pieces of equipment and personnel, the money's in the budget, but with your direction, obviously, we postpone that until whatever day we decide to postpone it to. But then again, make it retroactive if things work out the way we hope they do.
Is my understanding that we looked at the merit increase again, or the overall amount, and shave some of that as well?
Right, so in the process of going, all the evaluations of the employees have been coming in, their scores, and since our last meeting, we've been able to run all that through the program that tells us the amounts and things. And so, yeah, it's about 140,000 less to achieve a full merit. So we originally talked about 635,000, and we're down to about 495, 496, somewhere in there. And then also, in the meantime, there was a discussion to help, or there's been a contract put in place to help us with our prescription medication, and that also cut about 240,000 out of our original request. So, and that's hoping that that program can help with our prescription drugs. So there wasn't an increase on the city side or the employee side being proposed for health insurance premiums for this coming budget year either. So between those two things, about 380,000 less than what we had originally talked about towards personnel is needed.
So the current budget shows it at 3%. So do we, and I'm hearing a figure of about 2.3 is what you're thinking brings it down to this 495?
The 496, yeah.
Whatever, is
Yeah.
about a 2.3.
Right. So that doesn't mean a 2.3% increase for the employees. What that means is our total wage expense
Yeah,
right now
the merit
has
balance.
to increase 2.3% in order to accommodate a full merit increase for the employees.
Yeah, okay. And so I don't know exactly how we word that when it comes that time. We're going to leave that one up to Zach.
Probably the dollar amount, right? Should we stick with the dollar amount?
Absolutely.
Should we stick with the dollar amount versus a percentage amount?
Yeah, that would be
I
better.
think that would be the
Okay,
right thing to do.
okay.
So the way that generally works is part of the ordinance allows some adjustment there because we have to finalize all the, typically we can't get all that finalized before we have to adopt the budget. And so what it does is whatever amount of money we needed for the full merit, I've given you an estimate. Now we've given you a new estimate, the 496. Then we just adjust our use of fund balance off of that. So it does ultimately get adjusted in the budget down to what actually is needed to cover everyone's merit increase.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes sense.
And I know we.
So for right now, the whole dollar amount is in the budget as of today, but the intent is that that gets adjusted to what the actual merit increase comes out to.
Okay. And then we've talked about on these positions and some other equipment and stuff, December's the date we've kind of thrown out as a, review this. Do we need to wait that long, or can we say we'll review it in September if we're still not there? We'll review it again in December?
Alex and I's intention is to review it every
Oh,
month.
Every
with
month.
Yeah,
you.
we can review it monthly if
Okay.
we need
So we'll
to.
bring, we don't have the April numbers yet. We'll probably have them by Monday. I could come back at the, the next meeting we have in July, mid-July, I think is when we have the next one. So my intention would be we come back mid-July. This is what happened. This is where we're at. I mean, we most likely wouldn't make any moves then, but come back in August. This is where we're at. This is what we see. Maybe at that point, we address the crossing guards because school will be starting, right? So things are looking good, then we address that. We come back in September. My intention is to come back every month,
Okay.
and we address things as we go. We see how things are panning out, go from there.
So I guess, Tracy, my question is, how in-depth will those reviews be? So, I mean, we'll be there, for instance, vehicles, will there be vehicles purchased before that? Or will you guys come back and say, we feel like we can purchase these now? So we know, have a more tight knowledge of what's happening. Because normally in the past, you know, we pass the budget, the money's there, things are good, things are purchased when needed. This time, I don't think it's that way.
Right. I
So,
would say that
guess-
the intention would be to present you with the picture of what the condition of the city is, and then Alex would make his proposal to, these are the things that I would like to move forward with.
And I think that's what we've had in our discussions in the past regarding the budget, knowing that, here we are, we're kind of picking through these items here, but in reality, this is a fluid budget. I mean, this is something that I think, given the current circumstances, we're going to have to be adjusting regularly. In fact, quite often compared to what we've ever done in the past. So that's why I'm
I
kind of like
think
thinking
could
that
be,
we
and
need to.
It could be that, the full merit's 496, and 6 months or 3 or 4 months from now, things are looking really well, really good, and we just say, well, go ahead and appropriate half of that merit pay. Can you do that? Make it retroactive, and then the next 6 months, things are still looking good, looks like we've fully recovered, then you can appropriate the rest of the money. Can you do it piecemeal like that, or is it like a one-time?
That's up to Alex to
One time
decide.
off.
I would hate
Yeah,
to say
that's-
anything about that myself, so it's up to him to determine that.
I understand the
And that's not,
budgets.
that's not my preference, I'm just asking as a theoretical question.
Sure. Yeah, the answer is yes. There's all kinds of flexibility in how that's applied. I think the key, from my perspective, the key points that have been touched on is the fact that it's funding a full merit. And what the full merit means is that based on the evaluation and compensation system the city's had in place, it's been a very stable, predictable system the employees have been able to rely on over the years, is that it says that if you receive a certain score, then you're eligible for a certain economic reward based on that score. So the full funding allows that system can be met. That formula that's been laid out in policy for 25 years can be met. But yeah, there's great flexibility in the way that we would do that. And again, I think I hope you know that this is the process we followed virtually for the last 30 years in the city. And we are happy to make adjustments. That's part of our responsibility and job, is to view and be ahead of what's happening, and then to make recommendations to you, recognizing that in the end you make those decisions. So this is the environment is different in terms of the challenges we face, but the principles by which we administer the budget are not any different at all. There's more attention to it this year, on the part of a lot of cities, but for Layton City, this is not an aberration at all. This is the same way we've always done business. So I'm not trying to minimize that, and to have the involvement of the council is a good thing, and the questions that are asked, because obviously you adopt it and have to finalize it. But yeah, we do have great flexibility in doing that, and we'll make those recommendations to you month by month, recognizing the timing of some of those, whether it be vehicles or whether it be crossing guards. With vehicles, the delay isn't significant because of the generally accepted accounting principles. You typically can't encumber funds before the funds have been appropriated. And so, like these police cars, for example, that we're talking about waiting and buying later, most of the time you're ordering them after July. And so by the time they're actually manufactured and you receive arrival, you're 6 months through the year anyway, or very close to. So in terms of impact on the department, is just one example. The impact is negligible compared to what they otherwise have. There's a few vehicles that have been under contract, and so we're trying to honor those contracts, but otherwise it's not much of a change except for just a formal postponement of them, as opposed to just a practical one that happens anyway. So.
And Alex, I just have a quick question then. So, because this is the first time we've done this and all of the rules of how you pass these ordinances and stuff, so everything that we've talked about that's on hold will remain on hold, and then we will review that and pull them out as we get the monies or know that we have the monies to do that. On the merit, though, do we need to do something different? Because that is a different figure than what was in the budget we saw, or that the citizens saw on June 4th. So do we need to make that part of a motion that it's brought down to this 496?
I don't think you need to. You certainly could do that. As Tracy, I think, tried to explain, is that the historical practice has been that the amount of money that's asked for and put into the budget is an estimate. That number can fluctuate. Typically, it fluctuates down. What we actually spend is not what was appropriated in the budget, but it's what is actually required. When you go through and look at every individual position, you consider people that are topped out, consider people that are close to being topped out and can't get a full merit, even though their scores are good. When you factor all of those, higher paid employees may leave in the interim. You have some retirements and you have lower paid employees. That number always
Okay.
fluctuates, but what we spend is only what is required. We don't spend what was approved in the budget.
That was one of my questions about why we went from 2 to 2.3 and why their initial assessment wasn't just 2.3 if that fully funds the merit. So that's the answer, that we basically did all of the work for it to see exactly what a full merit would look like in practice, not just an estimate, and this is what it is.
Exactly. And a big piece of that, Councilmember, was what, again, Tracy mentioned, is the evaluations. All those evaluations have been done, so we know what the scoring is. We've sent all those back and had the departments vet them. They've been reviewed by the department heads to make sure there's consistency and predictability and fairness across the departments. And so what the dollar amount is no longer a guess. We've taken all those potentials out of it, and that's why we can come back and with certitude say the 496 is the number, and it won't go above that. And then we're delighted. We think that's a good approach, is to delay it. It's consistent with the way we're handling, in cooperation with you guys, so many of the other parts of the budget. It's predictable, and support that completely.
If I might add, we could commend Gary and his department for having that number to us quickly. They spent a lot of extra time, put off some other projects and things that normally they wouldn't, so that we could have, get that for tonight, where it was, like we've all been saying, a little bit different year. Normally they've had more time to do that, and so they made a real extra effort to get that number as early as they did.
Thanks, Gary, because the whole point of this is that we have so many numbers that we don't know. So
Yeah,
the fact that we can have a number that we do know is nice. So thank you.
Exactly.
Thank the people that did it, okay?
Yeah, thank the people that did it. I just want to say, at least from this seat, that as I've thought about this, the postponing it, having better information moving forward is a better way to do this, and being able to, because we don't, as Don says, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We all wish that we had a crystal ball, but because the city has been run so well, we know these numbers. There are other cities that are just flat out, hey, we're not doing anything because we don't have any money, which isn't how you should do things. We should be analyzing, we should figure these things out, and I feel that we've done that, and that's impressive. And the city, we're all about delivering services. That's what the city does, services for the residents. And those services are provided by people. We need good people to deliver good services. We want to make sure that when we flush that toilet, that it goes where it's supposed to go, and when we flip the spigot, the water comes out and the garbage is collected. Those things that you really take for granted until something goes wrong, and then it's, oh no, what's going on? I didn't think anything could go wrong. To me, that's what this is about. I don't want to punish city employees, those that are helping deliver these services, just because there's a pandemic. It's got to be an approach of, we're looking at the data. If, because of our diverse economy that we've worked on, if the money is there, and you've trimmed it. You've already looked at all of the items that you should have, which I appreciate. You've trimmed it. If the money's there, this is what we've done. It's not a, hey, let's give everybody a raise just because. That's not what this is about. So I appreciate that you're helping us to move forward. Look behind. We're gonna move forward. We're gonna look these months, the data that comes back these next following months, and analyze it and see if it makes sense. I would also hope that if it's not the best numbers, that it's an up to an amount, instead of, it's not just a yay or nay, but it's an up to amount based on the numbers. That's, at least from this seat, that's what I'd like to see.
Well, that would be the reason for postponing things, is so that you have an option that if things just fall apart, right, then
We'll have bigger problems if
Right.
than there's just this if things fall
then we will
apart.
already be prepared to handle those things.
So Okay. I like that. From this seat, from this seat, I would say I agree with what you said, Clint, because I think that there's an expectation that comes with city employment that the merit pay is part of that structure, and that's how it's been. That's how it should be. I think it's good policy, and so the withholding until we get more data is only that. It's just a withholding and abundance of caution. It's not a new policy, at least from my understanding. It's not a new policy that this is something that was going to be looked at more, with more thorough eyes. Now, I think that I appreciate the ability to be able to bring back the number and to bring these cuts because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and I think that we need to be realistic with the situation that's around. But we want to make sure that we're providing the kinds of deliverance of promises that the city employees are expecting. At the same time, understanding that the citizens who pay tax money to the city to employ all these folks, and myself, right, to be able to do that, they're sending money to us that they might not have as much money as they had before this pandemic started. And so that's kind of what we've been dealing with as a council and the mayor, trying to figure out where our priorities are and what we think is best. So I think this is good. I think it helps us be able to understand kind of conceptually how it works in practice, and just appreciate you giving us this information and helping us have the information in front of us so we can make the best decision for the citizens. So.
Okay. Is there any other questions regarding the budget? You guys want to bring up anything else?
So I guess we had some ideas about that we wanted it to be a certain amount. Is that what you were saying, Clint, that 2.3 is a fully vested merit, right? So do we have that 496,000 be what's in the budget, and we just go from there, and we can make recommendations, or as we get more information and we can bring it down, or do we start it somewhere in the middle, and then we say, well, this data is showing that actually we could actually bring it up to the 2.3, or if it's going worse, we go down. I don't know the best route. I could see the benefit of both. I'm kind of leaning in some ways towards having the number be what was introduced, the 496, because if we're going to be amending it and using it as we go along, I don't see why we would just create some number out of nothing and start from there. I mean, we've had discussions about what that number might be, 1.5% or whatever, but I'm not sure in practice that actually makes a lot of sense.
I personally think we need to hold to that number. We need to give them the dollar amount, the 496, and let them work with that.
Yeah, and say that's
then just know that you can adjust it as you go.
That's an up to, right? So it's
Yeah.
not anymore. And the whole purpose of withholding the funds back, at least in my mind, was if we fall off a cliff, right? So there's no really situation where we're ever going to go above the 496. So the only reason we're withholding it is if we're bringing it down. So if we're not making a policy suggestion that it should be lower than what the staff wants it to be in merit pay, then we need to make it the 496. That's how I see it.
But you're saying to hold it until
Yeah,
whenever?
yeah, and that's the question.
What's whenever?
When do we decide? I mean, they said monthly they'll have discussions.
I'm missing something maybe.
Well, it is. It's those monthly meetings that they'll hold with us. I personally don't see us doing much of anything definitive before September.
Don, I need you to in the mic. It's not picking you up.
Sorry, thought I was. I think for me, the earliest would probably be September. That would give us June, July, possibly numbers. I think we'll have a pretty good feel by then.
And it's retroactive.
Yeah,
And it would be
yeah.
retroactive. So it's not like they would, if we end up giving it, they're not going to lose it. They're going to get it. But come September, if July and August or June and July look really bad, that's one of the areas we look at these other things we've got on hold, and they don't move forward either until we, because
One more thing I was just going to say, Don, sorry to interrupt you, is that let's say we do fall off a cliff in the first 6 months, but we still have that 496 appropriated, and then we just really ramp up at the end of the year. The money's still there, so if we're doing really well, 8 months, 9 months from now, we can still pull the trigger and have it be retroactive because we've already appropriated it, right?
Correct.
So I think it gets kind of a long-term approach that really only if we absolutely have the worst case scenario would we ever not appropriate the full 496. It's just making sure that we aren't falling off a cliff before we actually go ahead and feel comfortable enough doing it.
Yeah, because what I would really hate to do, Dave, is give it up front and, or by September, give the full amount and still not have numbers. And like Zach's saying, you know, come December, you know, a second wave hits, or we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't have that crystal ball. And things start turning bad again, and all of a sudden we don't have revenue, and we've cut as far as we can, then we have to start cutting services. And that's the last thing I want to do is cut services. So if there's a way we can move forward cautiously with it and try to protect the money that's in there and review it as the summer goes on, I would feel much better about that. And I would hope that the staff would understand that we're trying to protect them as well as services.
I understand your caution, and I agree with caution. But I also believe we put 2.5 million on hold, right? And I'm not saying we take $500,000 and give it away, but, you know, you're talking about deficits in individuals' lives, where we're kind of creating one again here a little bit, you know, and I could understand saying, let's give X amount percentage-wise, however, you know, knowing what they were going to get. So you give them half now, and then we decide. Now, we're going to lose that half, and I understand that part, because they're going to, once you get it, you don't take it back, you know, but I believe they're employees that have done a great job. I think we're cutting corners as it is with everything, and I'm all for, you know, keeping an eye on everything, and especially, you know, with the those that work here. But I'm saying, I think to say wait for the whole thing, you know, I don't know. I can't come to grips with that.
So Dave, do you have an idea how much you would want to dish out now and how much you would like to hold on to later?
Well, is it again, here we go back to percentages. Is it 2.3? Is that the?
Well, we've cut $1.2 million out of the budget and put
No. I'm talking specifically merit.
merit. We've come down to 496,000.
Okay.
So you don't
excuse
necessarily
me.
need to talk percentage. You
I
could
think
say
he's thinking it was 3, now it's 2.3, so what does that?
Yeah,
is that-
I think,
I think that's where he's coming from.
is
Okay.
2.3.
Yeah.
The 496 is 2.3.
Is
Yeah.
2.3.
right.
So yeah, I say we give them, I don't know, half, you know, whatever. You give them something and you hold whatever back to, you know, to see what happens.
So
But
you're
I don't
saying
think-
maybe give them 1% now and
Yeah, or
Evaluate it
1.5, I don't know, something that, but I don't think, I'm sorry, and maybe it's just my nature, but I don't see 200 grand or 220 grand being a huge anything. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, we probably have a few accounts with 200 grand in it that are not being touched. Okay? And so I don't think we're losing, you know, and I don't know, I just can't
Okay.
see the world coming off a
I-
cliff that
Dave,
much.
That's a reasonable
I mean, you know,
opinion.
it's-
You don't have to apologize for it.
I don't apologize.
I can understand it. I can understand it. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at how much money the city revenues, city expenditures, that,
Right.
you know, 400, 500,000 is what, 1% or
I
something
mean,
like
you
that?
know, I'm,
So-
yeah, but I mean, to me, and I'll say this, truck doesn't have a feeling. So as far as I'm concerned, you can shoot a truck. I don't care, but people do, you know, and if I felt real strong that there was that much money that would make a big difference, then that's, to me, that's different. And I think in the long run, you know, we can do some things up front that, you know, somebody has to walk for a week, that's okay.
Well, that's the purpose of, I think, analyzing this monthly
Yeah.
as we go along,
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and I just want to see a couple of months worth of data. That's, because the money's going to be appropriated, hopefully, this evening for it, and it'll be there, but
Okay, council, this is a great discussion here, and I certainly want to give you ample time here on this budget because this is critical. We do have a couple other items, but what other topics do you have here? Because I'm just looking at the
You wanna go?
time here.
I've talked too much, you go ahead.
We got time.
no, there were two other areas that I thought we had some discussion about. One being the potential water increase, the 10% that was voted on, part of the water master plan from a while ago, 2 years ago, and so there's a schedule of increases that were set. I think it was a 20% and a 30% this last year, and
And then
And now
10%
another
this year.
10% this year.
35, 20.
35,
and 10.
20, 10.
Yep.
And we're now at the 10%, and we need to have a discussion of whether we keep that in based on our needs, based on the water system infrastructure, and the presentation that was given by Mr. Jackson a while ago, or do we take that out, and we're going to have an analysis like we did last year, and Tracy's done at the end of summer to see where we are with conservation, see where we are with the water, what we've used, and analyze it and see if it's really needed. That was brought up again, and so do we take that rate out, and if it needs to be put back into whatever amount, it might not even be 10%. Do we take it out here, and then after the analysis, decide what to do, if we need to or not, versus leaving it
So-
in?
Maybe to clarify, so in the
Yeah.
consolidated fee schedule, the rate increase is not included to be effective July 1. In the budget, the effect
It's-
of a rate increase in revenue and expense is there, but the majority of that would fall to net assets in the water fund anyway. And so, it's up to you. I mean, but the actual rate increase, we've already committed that we'd come back in November, so that it would be effective December 1st, one way or another, as far as actually increasing the rate. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not
That's
taking
in the
any
budget
funding
as
out of the
is.
budget.
The dollars are in the budget, but the
Yeah.
actual
Okay.
on your bill, moving from a certain amount,
That's not done yet.
that doesn't happen July 1. That's,
So it's more just a kind of a memorialization of where we're going on this, if we take it out or if we leave it in.
Been budgeted.
Presumptively.
I guess
Or
part of the
reduce it,
difference is
or-
too, is if you put the money in the budget now, assuming that you're going to do the rate increase, because that's what the original analysis stated we need, then you don't have to do a budget amendment later, and that's a large enough budget amendment that we would do that up front. I bring these small ones at the end
Yeah.
because there's enough money in the overall budget to cover it, and we're not required to come for every $5,
Yeah.
right? But, that would be large enough that we'd have a public hearing and open the budget
And I think that's
in order to bring the money back in.
right. And I think in my position is that
I was
we
trying to stay
should
ahead.
we should have it should presumptively be out until we have the data that's a lot more new than the 3-year study that was the genesis of the idea. That it's out, and then we discuss with staff, and we look at the data at the end of the summer, and then we decide if we think that we need that rate increase. And then if we do need that rate increase, we have the budget amendment, and we have to be the ones to come back to the public and say, we've looked this over, and we agree with the last council with the 3-year cycle, and the data still shows that, and we're going to vote on it, and he's going to put it on our shoulders now. We're going to have some ownership of it. So my preference would be to have it out, and then once the data and we review it in November, we can put it back in if necessary. Or we look at the data and we don't need it, or it goes lower, we can have those discussions then. That would be my position.
Well, on behalf of the last council, I will tell you that was the purpose of spreading it out over a 3-year period of time, is so that you could analyze it each year and see whether or not you needed it. But I do know that, based upon
So,
a lot of the breaks that we've had lately, I mean, I I can understand why it almost needs to be there, so I'll let you guys discuss this.
But last thing on that, Mayor, my discussion with Alex was that the first 2 years were the most important on the water increase for purposes of water capital expenditures and projects. And that the third increase wasn't necessarily as important as the first two for what we want to accomplish with water infrastructure in the city. Is that correct, Alex? And not to say that you're taking a position that you should be out or in, just that the first 2 years were the most important in terms of. Okay. Okay. And taking it out of this budget doesn't mean that we can't put it back in, is the point. And I guess that's just my idea, is that if it should be presumptively out until we know we need it and the data shows it, the real-time data after 2 years, and we can put it back in. Well, that's my position.
It's really no different if you
What's
take it
the
out
difference?
or put it in.
That's what I'm saying. I'm
So-
saying if we're going to take ownership of it, I think we should take ownership of it. If it's going to just be in the budget, we're taking ownership of it right now without having seen the data. I'd want to see the data and then put it back in. Now, like I said, in the end, there's probably not much difference. I'm just saying, if we aren't sure something is necessary, a rate increase on the citizens is not necessary. We don't know that yet. No one in this room can say it's necessary. So, presumptively, it should be out until we can prove that it needs to be in. That's my position.
So my comment to that would be related to the street lighting fee. I mean, a street lighting fee we're proposing to double, 100% increase. A lot of people in the city, that's just a fee that they get to pay. At least on the water rate one, it's based on your usage. The other one is not. And having been one of the ones that voted for the water increases as outlined, I would say leave it in there. I mean, my neighborhood, as I mentioned, I think maybe in a past meeting, just went through a couple weekends ago of 7 or 8 breaks over the weekend. And I know the condition of a lot of the infrastructure, and I know the projects that need to be in the future, and I would hate to fall behind by not having that still in there. So I think it would be in there because if I don't want to pay it, I use less water. So it's more of a usage thing. But that's my opinion.
And taking it out is not me taking a position about whether I'm going to put it in or not. It's just saying, just like the merit pay, I don't have all the data in front of me to be able to make the determination about whether it's required. So I want to go to my neighbor and say, yeah, we took it out because we aren't sure of it. And guess what? We're going to review it. And if the data shows that it needs to be in there, then it's going to come back in there. And you can come to the meeting and you can yell at me when the rating gets increased. Now, it's already in there. They're going to yell at me either way. So I'm not even taking a position about whether it should be here, because I don't have the information for that.
And what you're talking about, these breaks and things, the analysis might come back and it might be even more than 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be possible.
I'm not arguing percentages. I'm not arguing anything that way. Everything you said, I believe is right. The only thing I'm trying to weigh, we take it out or we put it in. What's the difference if we're going to come back in November and make decisions? You talk about we're making a decision come hell or high water. We're going to do it, whether it's out or in. And is it hard to put it back? I mean, I don't know. What's easiest?
No, it'd be easy. Like I said, it's just,
Okay. They
both
it's just a
require a
philosophy. It's just a
motion. However you
philosophy.
If it's a
wanna do
moot point, let's
Yeah.
move on to ducks. I
Okay.
mean, it don't bother me.
Okay, council, we have 10 minutes left, and if any of you want a quick 2-minute break, then I would say if you have any more items on the budget,
Want to hit the street lighting?
you want to hit it quickly so that I know we can't do anything quickly here, but I mean, we also have 2 more items. So I'm concerned about making sure that we get to these other 2 items and because I do know the consolidated fee is another topic, and of course, on behalf of the residents, we definitely need to speak about the fire restrictions. So those are critical items to me that we need to discuss here in this meeting, so.
I would think, let's do the fire restrictions since that's not on our regular meeting. We can discuss about the consolidated fee in the other meeting.
I would say we do have Mr. Price here from Parks and Rec, and if he could take just a second to explain the changes in fees for Parks and Rec, that would be good. Then he wouldn't have to stay the whole meeting.
Okay. I will make the decision right now that we will, any more additional items regarding the budget, we'll hold off until our next meeting. We will move on to the consolidated fee and allow Mr. Price to explain the Parks and Rec portion of it. And also allow enough time for the chief to go over the fire restriction. So, Mr. Price?
Thank you. The consolidated fee schedule changes that we're looking at have to do with the plaza that is just outside the building here. And the old plaza was $75 for a rental for 4 hours. The new fee that we're looking at is $150. The reason we looked at that is because the new plaza, the new pavilion has additional features that can be included with the rental. And it also ties the use of the plaza to the pavilion. And so instead of just being able to use the pavilion, they can spread out throughout that plaza and have a party or an event that needs that additional space.
And does this give them access also to the kitchen area that has a lot of amenities to it, or not?
That would be through a special event application. And if they wanted to use either the ticketing area or the concession area, we would handle that on a case-by-case basis through the special event application.
Does that fee increase from the 150? Should they want maybe just one of the item, perhaps just the kitchen, they don't need the ticketing area?
It would increase, but we didn't feel that we could set a single fee for that because there are so many different applications of that.
Right. Okay, I think that's fair.
Does the plaza include the amphitheater?
It does not.
So you could have two things going on?
We do. And that's why in the consolidated fee schedule and in practice, we will not allow this to be rented online. They will have to come into the office, and we only open this pavilion after we have set the Davis Arts Council's schedule for the season and our city events. And so
But what about rentals? Like if they rent, Susie's dance thing, and then you've got a thing, and they start, what about music, both ways?
Yeah, we would ask them to come in and review the conditions of use for the plaza, and at that time, we could let them know what is calendared in the amphitheater, and let them know that if there is a conflict, the amphitheater will take precedence, and they will not be allowed to use.
And that's why you
music.
have them come in, so you can, it's not an online, I got it. And
Right.
that's good, because I think there's certain questions you need to ask, so you don't have a battle, but, between the two.
And quite often, both of these facilities are rented in conjunction, the amphitheater and the plaza area. And you'll notice down in the bottom, that's one of the other changes is we moved our rental time from 3 hours to 4 hours to match there.
Well, it's a very nice, brand-new facility, so I think that,
Gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, it's warranted, and a great place to hold any events, so we appreciate you looking at that.
Thank you.
Okay, as far as the rest of the consolidated fees, we'll just cover it in the next meeting. So with that, let's move on to Chief Kevin Ward to give us the fire restriction update.
Grand Council, I'll be very brief with this. We are just expecting a very active time with fireworks as they're coming upon us with all the cancellation of all the shows. We know that sales are going to be pretty high this year. So the discharge dates I'll actually put together afterward. I'll have packets that I'll give you that's got everything that I'm going over right now that has the discharge dates. And all that's on the State Fire Marshal's website. But basically, fireworks sales start on June 24th and go until July 25th. A lot of them close down for a little bit of time. They don't stay open the whole time. The discharge times, again, are July 2nd through the 5th and July 22nd through the 25th, and that's from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, except on the actual holidays, and it goes till midnight. The restrictions that we look at putting in place, the municipal code 9.64.150 allows the fire chief to make some restrictions based on adverse environmental conditions and significant fire danger and fuel moistures. And so the decision I've made this year is to continue with the aerial restrictions that we've had in place for several years now. That is also on our city website and also has to be on the state fire marshal's website as well. So that will be on there. All fireworks continue to be banned east of Highway 89. That's also in our municipal code. So that just any firework is banned east of 89. It's been like that since 2004.
Including sparklers, simple little
Well,
sparklers.
unless you're a
or-
novelty sparkler, and that has to do with a certain size. I think it's 6 inches, a 6-inch or less sparkler is allowed. That's considered to be a novelty and actually not a firework. But any and all fireworks, so east of 89 are banned. The other thing that I would tell you that we are planning on doing, as we've done in the past, is added enforcement. All of our staff, our community risk reduction staff, the fire marshal and inspectors, myself, and we go out on these discharge times at night, and mostly in the restricted areas for aerials and east of 89, and work with the police department on enforcement. The one thing we are going to do this year is added enforcement in terms of citation process. So that means we just have to bring in law enforcement for the citations. We just feel that it's a little more prudent. We need to take a little bit stronger action than in the past. We typically confiscate illegal fireworks. Those that have aerial fireworks in the restricted area, we just advise them to go to the 2 city parks that we've authorized and let them discharge there. But any illegal fireworks, we do confiscate those, and then we end up disposing those and have a burn barrel that we put them in.
Okay.
I just have one question, Chief. So the aerial restrictions, these decisions are made by individual municipal fire chiefs?
Yes, depending on the city, you cannot, by state law, you can't just say no fireworks
Right.
allowed in my city at all. It
Right.
actually takes quite a bit of analysis, and that's what I was going to give you folks. And this
Okay.
is actually on our city website and the state fire marshal's website, and all the cities have gone through, and we've actually gone through an analysis and looked at where our hazards are in terms of the wildland-urban interface. And so that's why it's not straight lines.
Yeah.
We've
I-
tried to be smart and try to do really what we feel is fair in terms of the restrictions.
My question was, can someone purchase an aerial firework in Layton at one of the fireworks shops?
Yes, aerials
They can
are allowed.
purchase it, so they can
Aerials are allowed,
okay.
and we actually, thank you, Councilmember, that's a good point. At the tents, we require the sellers to post a large map, and we usually have a lot of these smaller maps for
Okay.
them to take. And we tell them basically to just make sure that if you're buying aerial fireworks, you understand that you cannot discharge them in the restricted areas. But they do sell all the aerials at all the
Okay.
tents, whether they're, wherever they're buying them, they just can't discharge them in the restricted areas.
Okay, I just didn't want to have someone buy fireworks for his kids and then have a police officer show up. That's not a good 4th of July.
Right, so that's
okay.
that's why we've worked with parks. We are actually the only city that I'm aware of that actually offers that alternative to our residents to be able to take fireworks to the park and discharge them. So we work with the parks to have places for them to dispose of them, barrels full of water, and we're going to have multiple barrels in there, more than we've had in the past, just because we anticipate a lot of people going there. So that's actually a really nice benefit for our residents to be able to do that. Like I said, we're the only one that I know of that opens up a city park, because basically they would be banned by code.
Okay. All right.
Chief, really quick, campfires up the trails, along the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, the canyons that go up, who has jurisdiction for enforcement there? And is there no campfires or no fires right now?
No fires are allowed. We actually had a meeting today on fire restrictions with the U.S. Forest Service Ranger District this morning. No campfires above the Bonneville Shoreline Trail area at about 5,200 foot elevation is about where it's at. We allow recreational fires in a backyard anywhere in the city if they're in 3 feet in diameter and 2 feet high and clean dry wood. And 25 feet from the structure and have a water source nearby. Any part of the city, they can have a recreational fire like that. But as far as an open campfire, Up on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, any of the unincorporated county areas, that's not allowed. The Forest Service prohibits all fires there. And we've actually gone through with our fire marshal and deputy fire marshal, have canvassed that shoreline trail to go dismantle any fire rings or anything that's out. So, and that's another part of our enforcement action, is making sure there's no fires up in any of those areas east of 89.
Do people call you and say, I'm going to start a fire? I mean, I know that's part of our ordinance, right?
For recreational fires?
Right.
We usually do. We usually get notified if somebody has a recreational fire. They'll call down to the station, and then we'll note that fire's there. Occasionally we do get complaints. Sometimes it's related to the smoke and or they're concerned. But if they're following the directions of a 3-foot diameter, 2 feet high, clean dry wood, that's usually not a problem. Especially if they use some of the smaller fire pits, that pre-manufactured ones that you can buy at the home improvement centers. Those work really well because those have a lid and a spark arrestor. So those actually are allowed closer to the structures, and that's actually what we really recommend people use. That's a much better option.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Okay, council, there's a couple items left, but we can discuss those in the next meeting. This brings our work meeting to a close. I know it is 7:02, and typically we would start our regular council meeting at 7 p.m. We're already late. But given that, I'm also going to exercise my right to take a 2-minute break. We've been sitting here, so I think we need to get up, stretch our legs, take a 2-minute break, and we'll reconvene at 7:04 so that we can start by 7:05. Thank you. Oh, about slid off my chair there. Okay, welcome everyone to meeting number 3 tonight, which is our council meeting for June 18th, 2020. We're starting at 7:07. Typically, we start at 7 p.m., but we've had a pretty extensive meeting so far. I'd like to welcome everyone out and those online as well. And as tradition, we have one of our council members conduct the opening portion of our meeting, which is the prayer, the pledge. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Councilman Thomas.
It's the prayer and the pledge and not and, because there isn't a third thing.
I stopped myself.
I asked a couple of the members here to volunteer, and they were politely enough to do so. So, Trace, if you'd come up and give us the opening prayer, and then Chad, if you'd take care of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful this evening to be together as members of the community and staff of the city and city council and mayor. We're thankful for the privilege to live in this area and community and for all the blessings that thou pours out upon this community. We're thankful for those who serve this community, our police and firemen and all of the other employees of the city that help provide the services to the citizens. We're thankful for the opportunity to meet peacefully and to discuss the matters of the city, and we're very thankful for all the effort of this city council and mayor to arrive at peaceful solutions and reasonable solutions to help make this such a wonderful place. We're thankful for these things and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I say thanks?
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
thank you for conducting, Councilman Thomas.
Okay, I'm unconducting now.
Okay, with that, we'll move on as traditional here, and the fact that we also have a set of minutes that we're going to need to approve. So, council, if you'd entertain a motion on the minutes.
Madam Mayor, I move that we pass. Is it pass? Let's see.
Adopt, approve.
Getting my minutes. There we go. Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of Layton City Council work meeting May 7th, 2020, and the minutes of Layton City Council meeting June 4th, 2020.
Okay, council, do you have any corrections to those minutes? I'll entertain a second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of adopting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on now to our municipal events. Any announcements there?
Yeah,
Councilman? Okay.
I think we need to announce that July 4th is canceled. And so, yeah, you boo all you want, but that's life. I've had a lot of people ask me, so I was, to be honest, a little shocked. And I said, well, yeah, we did this a long time ago. We did this a long time ago. But anyway, so if there's any way we can ramp up something just to reiterate, just to let them know. I don't know why they don't,
Okay.
you know, but I think we've done everything we could have. Well, some people just don't pay attention to a lot of things. But
Okay, along those lines, I will tell you, I know that Parks and Rec is working on a couple items that they feel like that they can involve the citizens without causing any type of crowd. And they're putting together the items, and we'll probably have it out, well, I know they'll have it out next week, and they're looking to disperse it on social media. So I know, unfortunately, there is a good portion of our population that does not get on social media. So certainly, you know, once it is posted, that perhaps we then share that with anybody. Start, talk about it and let them know as well, so.
Well, if we're gonna do something, let's get it going.
They are.
I mean, why are we waiting to announce? Where's Dave? He left.
Elvis has left the building.
It's,
I
if I'm
know.
not mistaken, July 4th is like, what, 10 days or something?
It is, but certainly there's been I have not sat in those meetings, but I do know that they're been trying to be creative and thinking of some different things to do, and also acknowledgments. As you know, July 4th, a lot of times we acknowledge a lot of our hometown heroes.
Sure.
And I know that that's a portion of it, so I believe that they're working on that, and we'll come out with that information next week, so stay tuned.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone else have any municipal announcements?
It was mentioned in the work meeting, but I think it probably warrants being mentioned again in this meeting, because it might be a different group watching, but the Church Street overpass will open Saturday, and Gentile Street, well, as early as tomorrow or Saturday, depends on who you look at. UDOT said Saturday on their last post, and then shortly after that, within the day, the Gentile Street Bridge will close as well. Really encourage people to be familiar with Main Street and the Parkway, and figure Fort Lane, to be able to figure their way out and plan ahead, especially so that our businesses that we do have on Gentile, both on the east and west side of Main Street, still get visited.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which in this particular meeting, we do not have any verbal petitions or presentations. We had several last meeting, and I was happy to do those. But with that, let's go ahead and move on then to our citizens' comment. This is the portion of the meeting where our citizens can come up and make suggestions or recommendations, or bring our attention to various items, and certainly we'd like to hear what you have to say. And we do ask, if you could, to just keep in mind that it is time that, to kind of voice your opinion, but certainly we have several items on our agenda tonight too, so don't go too long. So anybody who have any citizens' comment at this time? Okay, for the record, I need to verify or check with our Gary, is there anything online? Nothing? Okay, that we don't have any comments online or in the audience here. However, I think knowing that we're back to doing online and we're still letting our public kind of get used to that, I will keep that open, and we'll ask at the end of the meeting, should there be any come in, so that we can make sure we address them. So, okay. That brings us to our consent items, and on our consent items we have 6 items, one of which we are going to remove from the consent items and deal with it separately, which would be item number E, the adoption of our budget.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
possibly F2, because it's related to the budget, consolidated fee schedule.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Is the rest of the council, are you good with that? Okay, so we'll on our consent items then, we'll deal with items A through D. Items E and F we'll deal with separately. So knowing that, let's go ahead and proceed with the first item, which Terry Colburn, our Public Works Director, actually he has all 4 of those items. So Terry, welcome to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bring before the council Ordinance 2016, an amendment to the development guidelines and design standards. The Engineering Division currently maintains a set of development guidelines and design standards for the purpose of informing developers of the current guidelines and standards, and to assist them in meeting those standards. Some of these guidelines and standards require updates or revisions. Section 19.01.240 of the Layton City Municipal Code allows for the city engineer to draft, approve, adopt, interpret, and amend the guidelines from time to time as determined necessary. The Utah State Code requires that the guidelines be adopted and amended By ordinance, the city engineer and staff have rewritten the current guidelines as specified in the attached summary of 2020 changes. Staff recommends the council adopt ordinance 2016.
Okay, council, do you have any questions regarding ordinance 2016, the guidelines and design standards?
This is just a comment so that the public is aware that I did question staff on this. There are a couple of items in here that were totally new to me as far as ordinance, as far as small cell, the ordinance on the development, design, and placement of those, as well as something called LIDs. And I feel comfortable in going ahead with a vote on this tonight with the understanding that staff is going to come back at a later time and explain these a little bit further to us. I was very uncomfortable at first in voting on something that I didn't know what I was voting on. And so thank you, Steve, for spending time with me today explaining that to me. That was very helpful. But I would appreciate at a later time a little bit more instruction on it.
And I think in department head meeting, Alex had mentioned that he will set that up and that'll take place.
Okay. Council, any other questions? Okay, let's proceed to item B.
Bring before the council resolution 2040, an interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Kaysville City regarding the storm drain inlet between lots 7 and 8 in the Broomsfield subdivision, located at approximately the east end of 25 South. Resolution 2040 authorizes the execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Kaysville City regarding the storm drain inlet between lots 7 and 8 in the Broomsfield subdivision. Kaysville recently annexed nearly 40 acres of property that will comprise the Orchard Ridge subdivision. A 1 million gallon culinary water tank is being built within the subdivision. A natural drainage sits on a portion of the Orchard Ridge subdivision, and this drainage ultimately terminates at the city's inlet. The Kaysville tank requires overflow piping for water and may exceed the tank's storage capacity and a location to discharge the water. Kaysville is working with the city to discharge the overflow water into the drainage. Engineering calculations have found the drainage to be sufficient for the flow. Staff would recommend council adopt resolution 2040.
Thank you. Any questions regarding resolution 2040? Okay, seeing that there's none, we'll proceed with item number C.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bring before the council resolution 2041. A letter of agreement between Layton City and Weber State University regarding the handling of culinary water impact fees and water exaction requirements, approximately 2835 North University Park Boulevard. Weber State University is installing a private master meter loop 10-inch culinary water line to provide the Weber State University Davis campus adequate fire flow and culinary water with minimum impact to the Layton City's infrastructure. The city and Weber State University agree that the impact fee and water exaction requirements for a 10-inch master meter does not accurately reflect the true impact of the anticipated build-out design on the water system. As part of this agreement, Weber State University agrees to own and maintain the 10-inch culinary water line and other items after the bypass valve and after the meter vault at each connection, as well as complete a building permit application with the city prior to the start of construction of new building and provide the city with the fixture unit count for the new building. The city will own and maintain the 10-inch culinary water line and other items from the connection to the city-owned main up to and including the bypass valve and including the valve after the water meter vault at each connection and to provide the culinary water impact fee and water exaction requirement amounts for any new building upon the receipt of a building permit. The impact fee and water exaction requirement will be based on the meter size as determined by the fixture unit count based on the amount indicated in the current consolidated fee schedule at the time of application. Staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2041.
Okay, council, any questions on this one? Okay, seeing that there's none, let's proceed to item D.
Thank you, Mayor. Bring before the council Resolution 2044, a bid award to Orman Construction Incorporated for the Snow Creek Drive Waterline Replacement Project. Snow at approximately Snow Creek Drive from approximately 1300 east to 1475 east. Resolution 2044 authorizes the execution of an agreement between Layton City and Orman Construction Incorporated for the Snow Creek Drive Waterline Replacement Project. The project includes, other than the installation of the water line and the sanitary sewer line, the installation of sidewalk and road base and replacement of field fence. 7 bids were received, with Orman Construction Incorporated submitting the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $328,994.19. The engineer's estimate was $315,000. Staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2044.
Okay, council, any questions regarding the bid award?
I just have one. Is this a project that has been in the works for a while, or is this a new project?
We did half of it last year, didn't we, Steve?
Okay.
Yeah, and this finishes it up.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, that concludes the consent items that we would enact in a single motion. So therefore, I will entertain a motion on the first 4 items, if you'd like to repeat the ordinance as you present that motion.
Madam Mayor, I make the motion that we approve the consent items A through D. A being ordinance 2016, the Development Guidelines and Design Standards Amendment. B, interlocal agreement with Kaysville regarding the storm drain inlet, which is Resolution 2040. C, letter of agreement between Layton City and Weber State University, Weber State University regarding the handling of culinary water, which is Resolution 2041. And the bid award for Orman Construction Incorporated on the Snow Creek Drive Waterline Replacement Project 19-4, which is Resolution 2044.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favor of accepting all the 4 consent items as presented, say aye.
Aye.
No oppose. Okay, very good. So those first 4 items pass unanimously, and we will now move on to item number 3 of our E of our consent item, which is the adoption of the budget, and our finance director, Tracy Probert, will be presenting that item to us.
Mayor, members of the council, it's my pleasure to bring to you ordinance 20-18 to adopt the proposed budget, the property tax rate, and the compensation schedule for elected statutory and appointed officials for fiscal year 2020-2021. This process of coming up with and adopting this budget began back in December, and as you're well aware, we've had many meetings regarding this budget. As a staff, we'd really like to commend this council for the collaborative effort that's taken place, for the very important discussion on many points. I think that it's wise for us to point out as a staff that this council has taken this process very seriously, and we appreciate that. That's how the process is supposed to work. And I think that from the staff's perspective, you've done a very nice job of that. In the budget document, pages 2 through 6, and I realize I haven't got this to you yet, well, actually, I did send it to you earlier today. And, but we've discussed all of this. And on pages 2 through 6 is a good summary of each fund. So if there were those in the community that, later listen to this, they'd know to go to those pages and be able to see a very good summary of all of the different operations of the city, and that's a good place to go for that. As far as changes from the tentative budget, we felt that it would be very good, and you agreed with this in the many discussions that we've had about the budget and made many of those determinations, to take a precautionary step in reducing some areas of the originally proposed budget and what was presented at the public hearing. As far as revenues go, total reduction of 1.18 million. Some of that was, the bulk of that was in sales tax revenue, again as a precautionary measure, because at this point we only have through March. We don't have April or May's numbers yet, or anything beyond that, obviously. Also to reduce the tax that we would receive from hotel room rentals or hotel room stays, and a further reduction in the amount of interest income that we'd receive for the year. Along with those reductions in revenue was 1.2 million in reductions in expenditures, which would be taken out of the budget. Those included the elimination of one of the requests for an employee in the finance department, a fire engine, improvements in the HVAC system in this building, a transfer to the street lighting fund, and a playground at Chapel Park. We've also identified a reduction in the need for health insurance increase of $240,000, and identified that the amount needed for merit increase for employees could be reduced by $139,000 to an amount of $496,000. And we discussed that in the previous meeting, in the work meeting. In addition to these things being taken out of the budget, we've also proposed to you that a number of items totaling $1,345,000 be delayed until such time that we can determine as a staff and bring to you to propose to then spend those funds. Those consist of items that are hiring of employees, major projects, and major pieces of equipment. So 1.3 million of those will be delayed until such time as is determined by staff and then recommended to the council to move forward with those. And that's based on how our revenues come in during the year. I know that as a staff we felt that was important, and as a council and mayor, you felt that was very important, that we have the numbers, that we know where we stand revenue-wise before we commit to spending funds. So I know that that portion of it will remain in the budget, and Mr. Jensen, the city manager, will bring those things forward as he feels it's appropriate to do so. The property tax rate that's proposed in the budget is equivalent to the certified tax rate, which is presented by Davis County Clerk Auditor and also the State Tax Commission. What that means is that the city maintains a level of source of revenue from property tax, so there's not a property tax increase or decrease, and it does account for new growth in the city. I believe those are the things that, as the finance director of the city, I'd like to present related to this budget. Again, thank you very much for all your cooperation and comments, and for all the participation in preparation of this budget. Now, if there are any other questions, we could discuss those.
Okay, council, I know we had a good discussion in our work meeting, and as Mr. Probert stated, I mean, if we have additional questions, now's the time to ask them. So does anybody have any additional questions or discussion you'd like regarding the proposed budget? Okay. I see no additional discussion regarding the budget. So therefore, I know that we decided to vote on this item separately, so I will entertain a motion regarding the proposed budget for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021, the property tax rate, and the compensation schedule for elected statutory and appointed officials, again for year 2020-2021, ordinance 20-18. with the amendment of the merit increase being the amount of 496,000.
We can just make it as a dollar amount. So the way that he presented that amendment is perfect. Okay. So with that, I know that there's been a motion and a
I have a
amendment.
question, though.
Okay, that's your question.
So is the 10% water in the budget or the consolidated fee schedule?
Right now, the money is in the budget,
Okay,
but the fee is not scheduled to be increased until after we bring forward the promised analysis and increase the rate, which we anticipated in December.
Okay, so my motion, I'll add that the proposed 10% increase, the money that's in the budget for that proposed increase would be left out of 2020, 2021 fiscal year.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so council, we have a motion and a second with two amendment, or are you making two amendments or just one amendment for both items? Just to be clear for the record. Okay, with two amendments, one being the merit pay at 496,000, as well as the second amendment being that we would eliminate the 10% water increase until it is analyzed in the fall. Okay. Okay, with that, I'll take a roll call vote. It has been moved and seconded, so therefore I'll start with Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Nay.
Okay. It has been proposed and passed that we adopt the budget as presented. We will now move on to item number F, which is the consolidated fee schedule, again presented by Tracy Probert.
Mayor, members of the council, ordinance 2019 to amend Chapter 15, Title 3 of the Layton Municipal Code, otherwise known as the Consolidated Fee Schedule. The fee schedule presents a couple of changes. And I kind of wish Mr. Price was here to go through his, but I'll muddle through them. But first off, I can cover the ones that are related to me and my department on refuse or garbage collection. It's proposed to change the first container fee from $13.05 per can to $13.65 per can, and that's per month. And any additional containers from $10.35 per container to $10.95 per container per month. That's based on the contract that we have from Waste Management for an additional year of service, while we're in the process of doing a request for proposals to move forward. The next item that is in the utility department relates to the street lighting fee. It's proposed that the street lighting fee for single-family residential units be increased from $2 to $4 per month. The commercial fee from $2 to $4 per month as well, and that the fee for multifamily units, which I think I actually misstated in our last meeting when there was a question about that, but that was $1 per unit, and that goes to $2 per unit. Before I had stated that it had to do with equivalent residential unit, and that's commercial only. As far as Parks and Recreation, they have changed the fees related to the rental of the new pavilion out by the amphitheater and the plaza in that area, as compared to the pavilion that was at the other end of Commons Park before, and the pavilion that was previously out in this area. And so, actually, it probably doesn't have to do with the Commons Park one. Some of the fees related to deposits and cleaning, refundable deposits related to cleaning, rental of the grand piano, use of staff time during those events, and also the number of hours that the pavilions are rented. Before it was 3 hours, and they've changed that to 4. I believe those are the major items that they've changed in this fee schedule. And I believe that's all of the changes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I know we did not get a chance to discuss this much in our previous meetings, so council, do you have any questions regarding the consolidated fee schedule?
I have one, it's, I guess, more maybe for Gary or Alex. It's a procedural type of thing. It's in
No.
my mouth. I'm chewing on it. I'm
You gotta be
sorry. I
real
can't get
close.
any closer. Can we put an amendment on a stipulation with the, if we approve the lighting fee increase, that it be utilized first for dark area construction and any related UDOT stuff, and then other things that follow? I don't want to raise it if it's not going to go to dark areas.
I could probably answer a little bit of that. First, there are some costs that need to be covered. So there's employee costs and electric and some projects. So I would hate to commit the entire increase to cover dark areas first, when really we need to cover the costs that are there, which are the reason for raising the fee. The fee was scheduled to run in the negative, and that was the reason for bringing the fee forward, and also to add some employees to be able to maintain all of these lights that we now have in the city and those that existed before. So Alex, the city manager, can address how he would like to address the dark areas. I mean, we have talked in the past that we can commit a certain amount or a certain percentage of the increase. I don't know that that question hasn't been proposed to me, so I didn't do any calculations as far as to be able to make a suggestion of what that amount might be. I know that this fee does put, I can pull it up here for you real quick. It does put an extra 100,000 going towards reserve, and so you could say that amount. I know that would be a safe amount to say based on the way the budget is in the book right now, that it did increase the reserve by 101,000 actually. So anything over that, I wouldn't recommend that we commit that at this time.
Okay, and I don't have and I didn't mean that we wouldn't pay for the outstanding debts that we owe and the employee sorry about that, but I'm just concerned we're going to raise this and it's going to go to other projects. And the intent, I think, of this lighting fee initially is to bring out to the residents that are in dark areas and to replace old poles and things like that. And I want to make sure that that's getting done with this fee. So however we need to do that.
Okay, any other questions there or comments?
I guess my comment would be similar to that, in that it disproportionately would affect people in dark areas because they're paying double the costs and they're not getting anything for it. They're just paying more. And so I'm with you, Don. I think that I'd like to see a schedule or something that can show us that the dark or dimly lit areas of the city have precedent over other areas that we're not either contractually required to do now, according to UDOT, or something like that. And so that would be my hope as well.
I think we have, now that I'm remembering, in some of our work meetings related to this budget, discussed having the city engineer come to the council in a work meeting and review all of the projects that are out there, dark areas and so forth. And I would propose, with the approval of Mr. Jensen, that you entertain something like that, having the city engineer come and review those and make a determination on a reasonable annual amount that could be put into those areas.
Yeah, my other question was, this was brought up last year during the budget, the street lighting fee. It's back again this year. We're trying to make it so this fund can manage on its own. It doesn't have to be subsidized from the general fund. You can't see the future, but do you foresee in the near term, next 1, 2, 3 years, that you'd be back thinking that the fund needs to be increased in some way outside of just regular growth?
I don't anticipate that. My original proposal was to bring a $1 fee last year and a $1 fee this year for a total of $2. So that was 2 years ago. That was the original intent, was to be back here this year and adding another $1 on. So
We did one last year, right?
no,
No.
No, we
we
took
didn't.
off the one, so this is
It
just
away.
going back to 2. Okay, that's right.
Take it off, it just
Right, it just wasn't implemented. So this is the 2 to get us back where you were wanting to push it over 2 years. This is just 2 in 1 year, Okay,
Right.
that makes sense. So, because that was my concern. I don't want there to be a fee creep where we just keep, coming back and finding ways to charge more in fees. If it's to fund the street lighting fee and to pay for the new employees to be able to go out and manage those, because I know Terry, they were being used from Public Works, is that right? And having to do that? Okay, that makes a lot of sense to make it fund work in itself so that it doesn't have to continually be not just subsidized from the general fund, but having Public Works having to take guys off the shift. So that makes sense to me.
Okay, is there any other questions?
I would just echo Councilmember Fitzpatrick and Councilmember Bloxham, because we're going to vote on this, and there's different items that I too want to see a schedule. The dark areas, just adding my support to what they've said. I think that's prudent. And if it has to be from the reserve until we can get the reserve back, I mean that's great. But what I don't want to do is have this potential vote, have it pass, and then we've just said it and we don't see it. So just want to add my support to what's already been stated. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, with that, I will say that in addition to the comments that's been made, obviously you can see that this council is definitely looking at every item possible and wants to genuinely be involved in every one of those decisions. And I know that this requires a lot of additional hours. We'll be putting in not only as a council but certainly as a staff, and I can assure you that we'll do what we need to make sure that we're all physically responsible here. So, with that. I guess I could entertain a motion on item F of our consent items.
Madam Chair, on our consent item F related to the street lighting fund, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2019, amending and its other consolidated fees as well, adopting ordinance 2019, amending Title 3, Chapter 15, Section 3.15.010 of the Layton Municipal Code, consolidated fee schedule as proposed, with an emphasis that we as a council would like a certain amount of money or further instruction and approval of a plan to see the dark areas of the city lighted.
Okay.
Second it.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Nay.
Do we need to do a voice?
Yeah, I think that needs a voice vote. It's an ordinance.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. I apologize. With that, I will start with Councilman Day.
No.
Okay. Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Okay. There's your vote on ordinance 20-19. Okay, that brings our consent items to a close. However, we do have 2 items on a public hearing. So, council, I would entertain a motion that we go into our, let's go with the presented items. With the first item, our amended budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020, ordinance 20-17. We'll have, again, Mr. Probert present that item to us.
Mayor, members of the council, we do have ordinance 20-17 to amend the current fiscal year, July 1, 2019.
proposed text amendment to Titles 19 and Titles 18 related to public noticing. This really is related to making our noticing periods consistent with state law, and it really is focused on newspaper noticing, specifically for text amendments and zone changes. Our current ordinance requires 14 days notice. The state law requires 10-day notice for that same type of notice, newspaper notice. The staff report does talk about a 14-day notice for all those notice types required in our code right now. That's not what the state code or even our local code requires. That's been our practice in the past. The only thing that we're changing really is that newspaper notice. As far as the website notice and the, in other words, the Utah Public website notice. Am I not talking loud enough?
Yeah, that's better.
Excuse me. That should help too. So as far as the newspaper notice, or excuse me, the website notice and our notice on our public website, those are, it's a 10-day requirement. There's no additional guidance on that in our code. Our code does have that 14-day newspaper notice requirement. So that's the only change that's being proposed, is to amend that 14 days to 10 days to be consistent with state law. The other changes to Title 18 really are just clarification changes. They're minor in nature. I can go through those if you'd like, but they're just clarifying some wording in those in that particular section. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We are recommending approval of this minor change to our notice requirements.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, I got a question, Chad. Does that affect the posted signs on the property?
No, the posted signs they're a different notice period. In fact, they're shorter. It's a 7-day.
7-day on that?
Okay.
And our Layton City's ordinance is consistent with state law on the 7 days?
There's no state law for
State law,
posting.
just
No,
us.
that's just an additional thing that our code has.
Have you run into issues with, because it seems to me that it would make you more efficient in doing, you don't have to worry about two different timelines?
Yeah.
Have you had run-ins where you've had some negative consequences to potential applications based on having two separate public hearing or public notice requirements?
I think what it does is that it does put us in a position of trying to keep track of two separate days. I think I wouldn't say we've had necessarily negative impacts from that, but we have had we've had to delay a couple of times because of notice confusion from staff. That doesn't happen often, but it has happened. So this part of this is to try to put us all in the same notice schedule for each of the different application types. Subdivision amendments, for example, require some of these same type of posting notices on the state websites and the newspaper, and those are 10 days in even our local code now. So trying to make those consistent so that as we do these applications, we feel will increase, yes, our efficiency and the ability to keep those straight.
Okay. Because on one side, I could see, we definitely want you to be as efficient as possible. The other side is that the minimum standard for the state is 10 days. If Layton City has a higher standard, then maybe we just care a little bit more about public notice. And maybe that's just a policy that we have. We just extended public notice from 2 weeks from when we just take public hearing and when we wait 2 weeks to vote because it's important to us. Maybe the 14 days. These are just things I'm discussing.
No, it's a great point. I think one thing to keep in mind is this is just limited to newspaper notice. So the other notices are already at 10 days. The website notice, the posting on our public website. So those things are already in place. That's the way we've been doing it for a long time.
And
Chad,
go ahead. I know
we didn't have a chance to talk about this in the work meeting, but I understand the newspaper. I mean, who reads newspapers?
That's what I was going to say.
Sorry, Tom. Okay, Tom's on Dave.
Just the obituaries.
Just the obituary, see if he's in it. I understand. The other part of this, I think, is I get the streamlining. That makes sense to me. But the 7 days for the notice board, I mean, that's where it's happening. That's where people see it. I'm not necessarily, what's going on? I see the board here near my neighborhood or where I work, and I'd like to see that. I mean, if we're going to talk about streamlining things, maybe that's 10 days, or so it's consistent with the written notice as well. And we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but
Right.
I think the more closer to where it's happening, the more notice, the better. If we believe 10 days is enough or 14, I just like that consistent.
Yeah.
Especially where the project is.
Well, and it's 10 days in the other one where they have to receive the letter. for vacating easements and whatever. My question is, and this is maybe just a semantic, or because I'm a little OCD when it comes to things like this, are we talking business days or calendar days? It doesn't ever say. And so do you just, have you ever run into a problem where they said, well, 10 days, what is 10 days? If I receive a bill from a company or something, it'll usually say that it's due and payable within 10 business days.
Yeah,
rather than 10 days. And so to me, it's not clear as to what you mean by this.
Just as Kim was just reminding me, if it's not specifically spelled out as business days, it defaults to 10 calendar days. So it is 10 calendar days.
Calendar days,
Yep.
okay.
All of them?
And that's in
14
statute. I'm
calendar
assuming.
days?
That's what it is now. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the 14 calendar day
7
notice. Yep.
okay.
7 calendar days, yep.
Any other questions before we open up the public
No,
hearing?
I just want to say that I agree with Clint. I would like to see us go everything 10 days, including the board out.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a day that letters were sent within a certain radius of the property to the individual property owners and so forth, so I'm fine with reducing the newspaper to 10, but I think the other should be up to 10, like Clint, Councilmember Moore suggested.
I agree on that because that's the one that
Closest to home.
That's what
you
causes the
notice it because
discussion.
it's by you and you're thinking, what is it? And
Yep.
so, and my other question is, who decides where these A-frame things go?
It's by
The
ordinance.
code says they need to be adjacent to the property and in a visible location. So we do our best to find places that are on the public right of way, places that they can see from the public right of way. Sometimes it's a challenge on big sites that don't have
Most
frontage.
of the ones I see are no parking. So
No
you gotta
parking?
park a mile away and then walk back to the sign. I'm being a little
That-
facetious.
You know,
maybe.
we
A
do the
mile.
best that we can to put it in front of the property. Sometimes that does
Right.
fall in a
Okay.
no parking area. We don't want to hide them back in a site. We
Well,
want
I
to
know.
make sure they're
but
visible from
I
that.
feel like sometimes they are hid, even because you can't park and it's just tough to get to read it. I mean, I understand.
Yeah, sometimes it is tough. I mean, sometimes we're having to make choices too. Sometimes
Right.
when it's on two arterial streets, there's not a good choice
Right.
for
And
that
so
type of
I
access.
totally
so.
agree, moving it from 7 to 10 makes everything easier for you, remember?
10 days,
Okay.
no matter what. Yeah.
Okay, council, this is a public hearing item, so I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion, we open or close this, or do we close it?
No, you just need to open the pub.
it to the public.
I second it.
Okay. Okay, audience, this is time for you to speak regarding the public hearing and notice requirements for greater clarity. So if you come to the mic, please state your name and address for the record, and go ahead and tell us what you think.
Nate Worthen, 256 North, 3300 West in Layton. I was here at the Planning Commission meeting a few weeks ago where the text amendment was proposed, and then I emailed each of the council members about my concern about the proposed amendment. With Mr. Tim Watkins' help and also Councilmember Fitzpatrick's help, I understood that it was limited to newspapers, and so via this public comment, I'd like to withdraw my opposition to the text amendment. And I also really appreciate the conversation today about timelines that are consistent and potentially an expansion of the timeline for those posted placards and A-frame signs. This is how we engage the citizens and the public, and so it's fundamental to how our government interacts with our residents and citizens. So thank you very much for the conversation. I support an extended period on those A-frame signs if possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone care to comment? Okay, with that, let me turn to our city attorney. Do we have any comments regarding the public hearing item? And I do know I left the citizens' comment section open as well. So knowing that, I'd like to, none. Okay, there's none on this issue. So, council, I'll bring it back to you to close the public
When
hearing.
you're ready, I just had one more comment, Madam Mayor, so,
Do you want to speak before we close the meeting?
not necessarily, no, that's fine. Whenever you want me to.
Okay. Then, council, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So I got a question first. Can we up the days without a public notice to go back through the process? Okay. Okay, so I make the motion that we approve ordinance 2020, and I guess it's 2021 as well, with the stipulation that the physical signs of placards go to 10 days instead of the existing 7,
And close your public hearing?
and close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. I'll now entertain some discussion.
Just really briefly, there are two types of these posted notices in our code. We have a courtesy notice that goes out on items that are not public hearings, or, you know, those types of items. I would have some concern. Those are 3 days, so those are a 3-day notice. These are items that wouldn't allow for any kind of public comment or public hearing. I would be a little bit concerned about lengthening that time period. Don't have any concern about those that are like conditional use permits, where we're bringing those to the planning commission. Those that's fine, but the other ones where they're a courtesy notice, I would be a little bit concerned. So I would want to make sure that we're clear about what we're changing for the 7 days.
So, a limiting principle on the placard, 10 days, that it's for those that are specific to public hearing items. Is that right, Chad?
Yeah, so, I mean, as an example, we have some types of applications that just, they're administrative in nature. We do a courtesy notice, but they're not advertising for necessarily for a public comment period. So that's the ones that I would like to kind of limit as far as that change to, this, from the 7 to the 10 days. As far as the public hearings are concerned, the planning, or the zone changes, text amendments, whatever you'd like to do, we're willing to do that, and we're happy to do that. But on those courtesy notices, I would have a little bit of concern about extending that period.
What was your concern?
Just because those are not, we're not necessarily soliciting comments from the public because they are administrative in nature. Again, that's just as far as the routine that's out there, where we know what those types of applications are, and rather than upend those, it's really easy for us on these that we're providing the 10-day notice to do that at the same time. But I would be a little bit concerned about.
I guess my
posting these
question
others.
is, if it's just policy that it's 10 days, if it's public hearing or customary, everybody on the staff would know that those have to stay out for 10 days no matter what. And maybe that's more consistent. That's just my idea. You tell me if you think that doesn't work in practice, or wouldn't work in practice.
It could work in practice. I guess, one of the things that we're doing a delicate balance with here is that some of these items that we do the courtesy notice for, again, they're not necessarily something that the public could come in and make a public comment at the hearing. It's not a public hearing item. So, we want to give people the ability to have that heads up, but state law really in that case even only requires that we give the regular posted agenda notice. So it really truly is a courtesy notice. So I guess I'd like to be able to have that balance of providing some notice, but also recognizing that in those cases we're not necessarily soliciting public comment. It's just more or less a heads up kind of a thing. So it is a courtesy notice now in the code. I would like to keep that as a courtesy notice and not.
So you're looking for an amendment to the motion?
Yeah, I mean, I just like that clarification that we're talking about these items that right now require a 7-day sign posting. We're happy to change that to 10 days if you'd like. That doesn't bother
Okay,
me at all.
so I'd be happy to amend the motion to accommodate that.
Just a sec. Did you say courtesy? Okay, I'm hearing currency over here.
Okay, courtesy.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm
speaking
like,
very clearly
why are we
tonight, Dave.
saying-
Yeah, courtesy.
Give me an example of courtesy, and don't say please.
Courtesy notice would be, as an example, let me just find, I've got a little chart here that shows some of those. The preliminary plat for a subdivision which doesn't have a public hearing notice, that's just a preliminary plan, that's an administrative decision. That would be one that would get a courtesy notice, not an actual 7-day posted notice.
That's 7-day?
No, that's a 3-day, that's a
3
courtesy
days.
notice, yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Well, according to what you're telling us, it has to be nothing, just the agenda.
That's what state law requires,
Okay.
but, so we have a courtesy notice that we put out there.
Just, okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to understand what a courtesy notice was.
That's right.
I don't get too many of those.
Courtesy notice means we're trying to be courteous, right? We're trying
Right,
to
yeah.
give people a heads up.
Okay.
Okay,
Mayor,
any other
the-
discussion?
Yeah, the comments come in a little bit late, so before your
Right.
discussion, I was just going to give you, just from Toby Simmons, he says, I would like to see it go to 10 as well, which is already on the table and ready to be voted on, so.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, any
So
other
Gary, does my
discussion?
amendment to the motion satisfy things? Okay.
So, I still have discussion here, otherwise, no other discussion, I will then call for a roll call vote.
Yeah, no one seconded
No,
it.
it was not.
Oh, sorry.
Then I'll second the amendment.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded with the amendment of the notice, so that basically all the notices will be a 10-day notice with the exception of the courtesy notice that will remain at 3 days. Okay, with that, I will now call for a roll call vote. Councilman Thomas.
Yep.
Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, that does conclude our public hearings. So I need a motion to close our public hearings, because I enacted on those.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Okay, so we have now so we've closed our public hearings, and we do have one more item on our agenda, which is unfinished business. And knowing that we did cut our previous meeting short, as a mayor, I did not get to report on my items or have the council be aware of one item that I felt like I needed to bring before you. And you have one too? Okay, all right. Well, I'll go ahead and proceed, and then I'll have you finish up. So council, last night was our council of government meeting that we had, and with that, it was presented to us that, again, with the CARES relief funds that are being distributed, and there's now been some additional funding that's been allocated to the states and to the cities / counties. Davis County did put in for their fair share of it, and they've received it. And what they did is they went through and they assessed every city based upon the population and came up with a dollar amount that we would all then be eligible to receive. And again, these funding needs to go towards basically the COVID PPE or anything any expenses we've incurred as a city. In the discussion last night, we all recognized the fact that, and I think that Councilman Morris can appreciate this. Sometimes when you get the funding, you don't quite have enough to do beneficial good for some businesses. In other words, it's just a small amount. It's a lot of paperwork they have to go through, but yet not much. So what happens is you don't get as many businesses applying for it. So what I'd like to propose is that as a city, we go through and we acknowledge, again with our staff and with our city manager, any type of expense that we have and make sure that we're covering ourselves. And then any additional funding that is left over, that we then turn it back over to the county along with the other cities are wanting to do this same thing, so that basically we're then pooling our funds, and the county would then distribute those funds amongst the businesses within our county borders, so that they then would administer all the paperwork, all the data, the applications, and just make sure that they're basically, what it does is it takes the responsibility off of us as a city and tying up our staff as far as all that evaluation. So I would like to get your buy-in on this and see if you're willing to go along with the other cities, and basically whatever money that we feel like we don't need to cover our bases, that we then give it to the county to distribute and execute and come up with the rules to get it out into the public and to the businesses.
Mayor, I really support this. one of the things in reading and watching a lot of the stuff on the CARES report that has come out is that certain entities have kind of been left out of the picture in some of this. And some of this has to do with our nonprofits, as well as museums and arts and the cultural. So I would recommend that you maybe let the county know that those businesses, even though we don't see them as a traditional business, that they'd be considered in this, because they have really kind of been left out a lot of the ability to apply for this money, and they've been hurt, greatly. Salt Lake ended up doing that with the zoo, because it was going to fold if they didn't do something. I worry about our Sequest, and I don't know the impact to Antelope Island, those things that bring tourist dollars into the city, because they're those kind of businesses, have really suffered because they haven't been coming. So, and again, the nonprofits, I think, really need to be looked at.
And that was part of our discussion, and you're absolutely right. They did recognize those entities, and one of the items that we asked that if, as collectively as the cities, if they're willing to turn their additional funding back over to the county, that we actually are involved with that process as far as accountability, knowing they would generate a report as far as what businesses have applied, how much are they getting, and really kind of give us the information back. And again, looking at it kind of as a county, what's beneficial for all the businesses within our county, and knowing that we have the majority of the businesses within our city. I'm sure that a lot of that's still going to come into our city and be able to help a lot of businesses that desperately need help here. Any other comments?
Yeah, so we've had, is this another disbursement of?
This
so
would
this
be
is,
an additional one from what we've already gotten.
So what about that first?
So the funding
does
that
that
we
affect it?
currently have, that was part of our CDBG that
Yep.
that you and I have been kind of reviewing, those funds are still there, and we can still operate and distribute those funds. But this would be additional funding that would go out. And one of the things, the reason why I really like the idea of turning the money back over to the county, is because when you kind of go in and read the guidelines, it does say that they could change. So I would not want to put our city at risk, knowing that we've distributed some funding to a business, and then all of a sudden the rules changed, and now we're on the hook to pay back that. If that business goes under or something happens there, then it would make the city liable. So I think this is a win-win for all of us if we just turn around and let the county take care of it.
So are they planning on doing some sort of a grant as well? Is that?
They are.
With
They're
this
going
not a
through a
loan
grant
guarantee
process. Yes. And the thing about this particular CARES relief funding guidance is that time is of the essence. This is very fast-tracked. The county's already received their first tranche. And if they show action and show that they've been able to get those funds out quickly, then they're eligible for a second tranche and possibly a third tranche. Now, keep in mind that this funds need to be spent by December 30th. Otherwise, and actually the state is asking that if that the county actually identifies their businesses and any funds, they actually up the date, I believe, to November 30th, so that anything that the funding that they do not distribute then needs to go back to the state, and then the state then has 30 days to deal with it before it then has to be turned back in. So anyway, I think it's, I just think it takes the monkey off our back, and I'd appreciate your support on this.
So where are we with the original Layton program?
I think we've only distributed maybe, 50%, if that.
Yeah, there's still money there.
Yeah, there's still some there. So
is there a way for us to do another ask of the people in Layton? See if there's anybody
absolutely.
else before we give it back to the county? That would be my only concern.
we can, and actually, the county's actually going to come up they've got a pretty good marketing campaign that what we discussed last night that I think will really help get the word out all over, which would then, I think, help promote what we already have available so that these businesses recognize the fact that there is help out there. Okay. That's all I have to report. I know
I
Councilman
just
Bloxham.
think, you know, just speaking for myself, as we go about this budget item, we've passed the budget and there's been lots of discussions about funding police and supporting police and, you know, members of Salt Lake Police Department leaving, 5 of them, I think, yesterday, Don and I were talking about. And I think that criminal justice reform and police funding don't have to be against each other. I don't think you have to pick one side. And I think we've had discussions as a council and with the mayor about trying to make sure that we're supporting and that we're funding our police and our public safety as much as we can, while having discussions about if there's things that we can do better as a city. And I think that's important, that the public kind of knows that we are having these discussions, that, you know, we talked about the pandemic and not living in a bubble. Well, we don't want to live in the bubble with what's going on in the rest of the world and even our own state. And so I'm just very grateful for all the public servants that we have in our city and what they do. And I hope they can feel that from the council, that we support what they do and wish them all the best and thankful for all that they do for the community. So.
Yeah, and maybe just add to that it doesn't have to be a choice between supporting law enforcement and being against protests and those sorts of things. We have a constitutional right to protest and peaceably assemble, and those two things shouldn't be tied together. That, well, if you're against law enforcement, then you're against it. Two separate issues, and we need to and at the same time, those law enforcement officers are there to help protect when these peaceable or protests could get violent. I mean, so it's connected, but two separate issues about how we support our law enforcement, and at the same time, we all swore to defend the Constitution. So it's our duty as well. So, thank you.
Okay, that's all the items on the agenda. Council, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss.
I just want to make a comment, and then I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I again want to thank Layton City staff. I especially want to thank Tracy and Alex for their patience, honestly. I'm sure you probably go back and go, these people, are they ever going to get this right? But no, I really do appreciate your patience, your willingness to listen to us and to answer our questions, and the other department heads as well. You've been great to respond to our needs. Thank you.
To adjourn?
And a motion to adjourn and go home.
Second.
Okay. That concludes this meeting. Thank you for your patience, and those viewing online, thank you for hanging in there with us. Have a good evening.